of the morning, my fellow peasants. How you doing? Man, Fluffy, Bonce, Pez, very much engaged. Jesus Christ, I need to get a haircut. So episode Ardyn, I'm at last going to cover it. I was going to do the Tabata news first, but you know what? I'm feeling a very bummed out vibe from the Final Fantasy fan base. So I thought, you know what? Let's cover the exciting stuff. Let's cover what we've got on episode Ardyn. This is going to be the second time I've seen it. The first time was in that 4:30 in the morning stream. But there are some points that I've been musing over and I absolutely must cover. But this is a slick trailer. Home, sweet last. You know what, actually, you know what, let's just go through it. I'm just going to go through it as we go through it. So this right here, we have seen this before. I'll quickly show the image. This is a classic old piece of artwork from the old days, what with Ardyn being chained up. You had the people praying and whatnot. Well, which is interesting. The people praying, I don't know if that's just artistically depicted. Because obviously Ardyn, he's been locked away for 2 millennia. Now this was interesting to find this out, that for the full 2,000 years Ardyn has been locked down here, because the timeline kind of implies some other stuff. For example, Ifrit being tainted by the Scourge. This was always something that was very, very kind of uncertain. Because I always thought back in the day that Ifrit was one of the first ones to bring the Scourge, or that's what we kind of first heard, was that Ifrit brought it down to kind of get revenge on Solheim because he gave them fire and then they acted like douchebags. But then we found out very later on that it was actually Ardyn who corrupted Ifrit. Now, I don't know if he's done this before he's been locked away, if it's after, but what I do know is that this location. Oh, I'm going to be waffling like a motherfucker this video. This is one of two locations. Either this is Piteos, which it'd be cool if it was Piteos. It would be very cool because, you know, Piteos has all the trademark symbols of this is where the Demon Scourge came from. It has the parasites actually down there in the dungeon. It has all the scourgy goo coming up the stairs. So it could be Piteos, but if not, Angel Guard, which was the little island prison that Noctis woke up in after his 10-year slumber. Let's push a bit further. Alright, so Verstael being the one who comes and frees him. And not looking too shabby, Verstael, my boy. You were an ugly motherfucker in the original game, Verstael. He's not looking too bad. This bit right here, this is just classic, swanky, suave Ardyn. Look at how he casts his ability, just pop! And this spell effect is awesome. Wow. You can really see the Prompto in Verstael here. You can really, really see it. I mean, the resemblance, I'll throw them up next to each other. So it looks like Verstael and the Niflheim Empire, they were the ones to go into Angel Guard or Piteos to get Ardyn, simply to use him to try to beat the Lucis Kingdom. The Lucis Kingdom being that they're the only ones with a crystal at this point. You know, one of the points that really got dropped was that this world originally had 4 crystals. All the kingdoms had one, but Lucis is the only one remaining, hence why all the others are kind of falling apart, though not really. Like Altisha's doing perfectly fine. This was something that really never got explained in the game and kind of faded away into obscurity, as well as a few other points, which is why the Ardyn DLC is so important. There's so much to explain, and I'm not going to get all the answers from this trailer. Oh, that shadow warping is swank. Oh, savage. Alright, so whoever he is clearly means us harm. Now, I love that the kingsglaive are finally involved. Regis here is obviously king. And let's quickly finish this trail off. Right here. Swoonk! Okay, I mean, most of us noticed this. This is such a versus throwback. Back in the day, it was Ravens against Noctis. So the fact they've reused it, I like it. But I am a little bit worried. And I do have questions. Because, I mean, the obvious one is if Regis 30 years ago, and in the stream that they said 30 years ago, that's exactly what they said, 30 years before the start of the main game. Now, I don't know if they might mean 32 or 28, you know, I don't know if when there's on the stream they just say no, they're 30, it's roughly 30 years ago. So I don't want to be too specific with them, But my first problem is, if 30 years ago, Regis went up against Ardyn, and because of this knew full well who Ardyn was. I mean, he had to have known who he is at this point. He's literally using the king's weapons. He's literally using a full set of armature. Now, I don't know if this means Ardyn just erases Regis' memory, but the reason I'm saying it is because when it comes to kingsglaive, Regis had no idea who Ardyn was.
Well met, my dear Lucians.
Has Niflheim grown so bold that they send the Chancellor himself as envoy? And under no guard at that.
It is an honor to be recognized by the great King Regis, yet permit me to stand on ceremony and introduce myself nonetheless.
He had no idea. He still referred to him as the Chancellor of Niflheim. He didn't clock him as a threat that he was. He didn't warn Noctis about him. I don't know. On the flip side, I think maybe Regis did know, but he didn't tell Noctis because he knew about Noctis' fate, so he knew he had to play along with it, which would then kind of maybe explain a little bit more why Regis was asking for forgiveness. So follow me, this Omen trailer in which Regis walked out onto the balcony, he looked up at the heavens and he asked for forgiveness. So he knew what was happening at that point, obviously, and he also must have known that that was Ardyn's voice in the crystal. Now, we never had this confirmed, but it was confirmed in the German and the French versions of the Omen trailer.
I have seen many deaths, but now I'm only looking forward to one, and then I can rest.
He will take responsibility, you know.
As must we all.
The voice coming out of the crystal was Ardyn's. So Regis must have known that. He must have recognised it. So whether he was just playing really, really clever in pretending that he didn't know who the Chancellor of Niflheim really was, I don't know. But it's pretty interesting. And then finally, we see a brand new character model for the Lucii King himself, Somnus. Woo! Now, I think, and I've never seen it, Sasuke is it? You know, everyone who says Noctis looks like Sasuke. I don't know if it's Somnus whose voice actor. I've been seeing people that Sasuke's voice actor is being used. So I don't know if they're using that for him, if it's Somnus they're talking about. But this guy, to me, he looks straight like the guy out of Lost Soul Aside. I said it during the stream, but really cool model, I like that. And it's nice that we're going to actually get to see the showdown between the brothers. So that's pretty much the trailer, you know. It's only very short, 48 seconds, March 2019. Cool. Who's this Final Fantasy peasant? That sounds like a sick channel. Subscribe to him. Right, so going into this a bit deeper, what I really love more than anything is just getting to explore the new Insomnia. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Insomnia in the Kingsglaive movie was a glorious, beautiful city, and it was kind of a bummer to ever think that it would just be the ruins of Insomnia. So this is... I really hope there's a lot of free roam and free travel to be able to go off and explore. I really hope you do what you kind of did in the Royal Edition. You made Insomnia incredibly explorable. You had side bosses, side quests, little things to go off and explore and do. More of that. And what we can see here is it looks like for some reason we have these platforms. These platforms with these sort of beams shooting up in the air, and it looks like we have all of the Lucii kings, the statues of them here. So I think we have one here. I think that is the female, the rogue. I think we also have here, that's it, the kingsglaive come down to the defense of the mystic, which this is Somnus here. Now what I'm thinking they might do, and follow me in this, the fact they show this scene and then the Somnus, I don't know if that's what allows him to contact Somnus in that flashback, you know, access the spirit, because we know the spirits of the Lucii kings, they're contained within, well, they weren't originally these, and this is the other interesting thing that I'm kind of wondering what they're going to do, because we know that there was the old wall and the new wall in Insomnia. The old wall were the giant, massive fuckers that came, the big old buggers who took on the diamond weapon demons, and that was very much an obstacle for Ardyn. It was very much an obstacle that he had to get through the barrier, get through the wall, but even if he managed to do that, he had no way to be able to take out the old wall. So I don't know if that's what's going to thwart Ardyn's plans here. This is going to knock him back because by the looks of it, he's got himself into Insomnia. He's got himself all the way up to a fight with Regis. How this is going to go down as a finale, I'm not sure. But whatever the implications of it are, Ardyn's not going to get what he wants here. He's going to have to go back, regroup, replan. He's then going to have to go off and again use Verstael and the Niflheim Emperor to his own means. And some of those bits, when we look in the timeline, some of those things are, for example, a few years later, just before Noctis is born, I think it is, the Niflheim Empire awakens Shiva and kill her. No, Shiva awakens due to hearing about Ifrit. She fears and senses Ifrit. So I think that's maybe what Ardyn's plan. I can't say this for certain, but what I think is after this, Ardyn's going to get pushed back. He's going to have to realise he has to beat the old wall, so he's going to have to develop things like Immortalis, which in the timeline, in 745, that's it. A lot happens in 745, which isn't 30 years ago. I believe the main timeline starts at 756. That's when our main game starts. So in 745, that's when Lunafret enters a covenant with Shiva. Shiva senses the pyre burner, is straying from the light. So that may refer to Ardyn resurrecting Ifrit. Okay, so that happens then. I'm just trying to piece this together as to where this Ardyn episode fits, but it's also where the researchers they're studying the Solheim Godslayer. Solheim being the very old civilization before the four nations of Eos were formed. They find a huge Magitech weapon, they codename it the Godslayer, so presumably they created the Godslayer to be able to take down Ifrit. So in the stream, when they said it was 30 years ago, so we can assume from just that it's 726 when the Ardyn episode is happening. Now if we go back to 726, we'll see this is the point where the northeastern archipelago of the Cavanal region is invaded by Niflheim. Aranel Highwind is born. Lucius discovers ruins at Tailpark Crag and many venture aside. So the whole thing with Gilgamesh. That's when Corleones goes in. He becomes Cor the Immortal, which was in the Gladiolus episode. But this was also around the time Cor becomes bodyguard to King Mors. That's the interesting thing. Regis isn't king at this point. So, I mean, Regis isn't king for another 3 years after this point. That's why I was saying about being pedantic on the dates when they said 30 years. Because very clearly in this, Regis is king at this point. I don't know if maybe Ardyn had something to do with the way King Mors died, but even if that is the case, even if it was 3 years after, it wasn't exactly 30 years, it was instead, it was 27 years before the start of the game. That still doesn't make sense. So I'm actually thinking maybe this episode Ardyn takes place over quite a long time. It happens over quite a number of years. There's going to be some time skips within this, which I hope they make very clear. Back to the timeline, we'll see that 33 years ago, I think it was. Shit, where's the timeline? I've got too many tabs open. It was around 33 years ago. So yeah, 723, that's when Verstael started making Magitech. But it was in 722, 33 years before that, Ardyn Izunia enters Niflheim, manipulates Emperor Aldecap, and proposes development of a Magitech infantry. And he's inaugurated as Chancellor. So what that makes it seem like, maybe Verstael was acting out against Aldecap.
Finish this, and see the demons disposed of.
As you command. Such a pitiable waste.
Who is a character I'd actually really like to see appear in this DLC. That'd be sick. I think that Aldecap was actually a pretty cool character, especially in the Kingsglaive movie. They kind of did him also really, really wrong. Like, they did him a wrong un in the game. They just... so bad, in fact. It was so bad. They turned him into a demon, but they didn't even explain it, that it was a demon, and everyone after was kind of like, oh shit, I just killed Aldecap. I know they released the chapter 13 with Gladiolus and Ignis, and they kind of made that a lot clearer, but I think that Emperor Aldecap needed way more recognition, and kind of done more like how most Final Fantasies are done. Do you know what I mean? Like, most Final Fantasies have that clever way of making you think that the main villain you've been fighting the whole time is the main villain, but then you find out there's a step above it. That's the thing. Aldercapt was that first, like he was the first enemy, and then you find that Ardyn is behind it all. But they kind of got the first tier very much wrong in game anyway. I think they thought the Kingsglaive movie had done enough. So this whole thing, and there's a load more I'm not even covering in this video, this whole thing has just been a perpetual mystery to me, how exactly all of this fits in, because we have that timeline, but how it all merges together we don't really know, because the thing is, the Niflheim Empire, they've been after the king and the oracle for nearly 200 years at this point. They actually wanted to invade Lucis to get the crystal. They also wanted to invade, I can't remember what the Florette's household was called. Fenestala Manor. That's where the Florettes resided, but they couldn't do it because the masses were too much in love with the Oracle, and they couldn't go against the masses because otherwise they would get their ass kicked. I always thought that drive to take out the Lucian kings and the oracles was always an Ardyn Insomnia imposed will. But this makes it seem very much the opposite. It seems like the Niflheim Empire were going that way for many hundred years, and Ardyn has literally only been a player in the whole thing for 30 years. And finally, the last thing I can discuss from this very short but very auspicious of trailers, the whole showdown with Somnus. So this was kind of the other confusion back in the day. It actually took us all the way up until the Royal Edition to finally hear the name Somnus. Like, this is the thing, from the main game we didn't even know Somnus was a person, let alone Ardyn's brother. So they kind of explained it a little bit in the Royal Edition, but from my understanding and from reading the official translation works of the story, 2,000 years ago. So I'm going to try to get my head in the game to explain this. 2,000 years ago, a parasite, these insecty things, rather than some sort of meteor that Ifrit brought down, which was originally the concept we kind of heard about. No, they came from like these parasites. It spread very quickly. It wiped loads of people out, and in response to it, the gods picked a man, Ardyn Insomnia, and gave him special gifts to be able to cure said scourge. He went around and did that, but as we know, the scourge infected him. So the gods kind of dicked him over that way. It didn't eradicate the scourge, it just absorbed it into him. Then when he'd absorbed enough, the gods went, oh, fuck you, mate. You're not worthy. Like, they really dicked him over, and that's why I did that video back in the day. Are the Astrals really the good guys? Like, are they really? Bahamut has done a lot of dickish things. In fact, I'll share a link in the description for that. We also found out from the Summons backstory, the 1.13, that Shiva also used to be a bit of a dick. She used to just kill humans for the sake of it. Like, she used to just freeze them because she thought they were pathetic and small and beneath her. And it was actually Ifrit who was the first to see that there was potential in humans, and that's why he gave them fire. That's why it evolved, and he kind of brought Shiva around to his way of thinking. So once again, Ifrit starts off as the good guy, the other Astrals are the dicks. Ardyn starts off as the good guy, everyone else is the dicks, and that includes Somnus, because when he got rejected, Ardyn was no longer worthy to have the throne because he was corrupted. They passed it straight on to Somnus, and Somnus became king. Little smug bugger. He's also Ardyn's younger brother, and the gods warned Somnus about the calamity to come. That being Ardyn, because he couldn't actually die. The scourge had made him immortal. So presumably Somnus then took Ardyn down to Angel Guard or Piteos and chained him up. That is pretty damn grim, and left him there for 2,000 years. So all I can say to that is, you bloody deserve it, Ardyn. In no way. And this is what I like about Ardyn. Like, his motives have a very, very clear reasoning to it. You know, it says he saved countless lives from the scourge, and this was how he repaid him. So the fact that he takes all those lives back, I don't think Ardyn unjust in that. And actually there's been some other really interesting theories and discussions that I've been a part of on the internet that actually says that Ardyn was actually only after getting revenge on the Lucis household, and that his quest wasn't actually to completely destroy mankind. that he kind of intentionally lost at the end, and it makes a lot of sense. And not once did he take the opportunity to kill Noctis. At no point did he take the opportunity during those 10 years to completely eradicate mankind. Like, he could have done it so easily he could have finished them off, but he didn't. And that's the thing, he took out Noctis, or he let Noctis take him out because he knew that Noctis would have to eradicate himself and his entire family line. I think that Ardyn was settling a score that, frankly, while it is unfortunate that, Noctis, the father of the sins, sins of the father are the sins of the son. That's what Noctis had to pay, but Ardyn was doing exactly what was needed. Let's just get a little swanky shot of the man himself. God, I love this character. And Darren DePaul, I cannot wait to hear more of his voice acting. I think Darren DePaul is going to absolutely have a field day with voicing this DLC. He's so passionate about the character Ardyn. He's passionate about it. Even Reinhardt in Overwatch, he's so passionate. I love it. I would actually argue he did exactly what was needed to save mankind. Because think about it, the only way the Star Scourge was going to be eradicated is if he was eradicated. Well, how can he die? He's immortal. There was only one way, for a chosen king to eradicate him. Ardyn could have just got revenge. He could have just came back, taken over and killed every single Lucius household member. Something like that, but he didn't. He didn't do it that way. He did it in a very specific way. He allowed Noctis to ascend. He, in fact, assisted him to ascend. Got him to the point in the crystal where he now had the power to kill Ardyn, which was the only way to eradicate the Scourge. So how is he the villain? I know he's a villain. There is definitely some rage and anger in there, but actually is Ardyn the villain? He did the only thing that could possibly save the world. And when I actually look at the way Ardyn died, it kind of makes me think it might have been intentional. Like on a theory level, at least, anyway. Because think about it, he has a full Armiger set. He has all of them. That includes the Sword of the King, and that was the interesting part about that final showdown with Noctis. He counters Noctis with all the same weapons, except for when it comes to the Sword of the Father. He doesn't summon it, and he allows Noctis to kill him. Now, at first I thought, oh crap, did Ardyn not have a Sword of the Father? Here it is. Here it is. You see right here, very prominently, straight in the middle, that's the Sword of the Father, as is Regis there, and that was the only one that Ardyn didn't summon for some unknown reason to allow Noctis to kill him. So there we go, guys. I'm pretty much done, but you can see what I mean. So many questions muddling about because episode Ardyn, it's the bridge behind everything. It's the bridge to the timeline 2,000 years ago, to the timeline throughout the game, how this all fits together, and there's definitely always been some little pieces missing. So I hope they do well with being faithful to how it actually plays out. But you know what, it's been such a constantly evolving project. I'm not going to be really salty or really nitpicky if they happen to have some like little errors, as long as it goes along roughly the right track, as long as it carries enough information and enough plot juice for me to be satisfied, then I'll be happy. But I'm not going to be really pedantic about it, especially as we have to acknowledge that we have a new director doing this. Very excited for episode Ardyn in 2019, and I really just wanted to open this video in this comment section to really talking about the story and the lore of it. If there's any observations that you guys make or any tidying up on the timeline of what I've rambled through, let me know in the comment section below. Until the next video, come out!